My name is Alex R. Wagner. This is episode 38, UFC edition of No News is News.
Guys, I guess just don't follow the sky, you know?
Here again. What'd you think of the Jon Jones fight? Yeah? Is that a better one? Jerry, it's the YMCA, and it's everyone's doing the YMCA. Everyone's walking like a robot, and it's not because of pieces from the Lego Man Pharrell. It's because of the one, the only Donald Trump was at UFC 309 and somehow stole the show away from Mike Tyson this weekend. Unbelievable. Jake Paul must be a little upset. He had a good 12 hours of people talking about how he might have been a scam or a faker or whatever, and then I was like, and it's gone. It's gone. All that generated revenue done. Whatever fame you got from that situation, you got. The UFC rally? There was a UFC rally, apparently, according to the mainstream media. There was a UFC rally and Donald Trump attend the UFC rally.
Last night, President-elect Trump was at a UFC rally, and alongside him was someone who has had a lot of scrutiny, Elon Musk. He is a billionaire with extensive U.S. government contracts. As I understand it, holds a security clearance himself. He has extensive business ties with China. He also had with him the Saudi Arabia Private Investment Fund governor. They invest with his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and they've held golf tournaments through the one of their entities at Trump golf courses.
These people, any mainstream media source, slowly dying a very, very slow death as no one watches it, or the people that do watch it are people just producing independent content to make fun of it, like this show. But if the mainstream media was going to cover this correctly, they would cover it the way that I'm about to cover it. First, by saying Donald Trump came out to a screaming crowd at the UFC rally, or at the UFC rally. Yeah, I guess. Let's keep it. At the UFC rally, Donald Trump. But behind him is literally the sitting Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Think about that, people. Regardless of the cabinet members, regardless of the other people in the room, that is the news. If Donald Trump is at UFC, where is Joe Biden, the actual president? What's the real president doing? Let's check in on him. Get out of there, Joe Biden. You better than this. Joe Biden's actually cool. I want Joe Biden to be cool. Can Joe Biden be cool again? These really weird, sarcastic smiles he keeps doing. Amazing. But again, meanwhile, we have the thing we've all been waiting for, which is basically at the end of the fight, Jon Jones gives the belt to the American president in the most iconic American moment in probably the last 10 to 15 years. And again, the media covering it like it's just some U.S. But then again, remember, the real president of the United States is currently just walking into the Amazon rainforest. Just see you later. Goodbye. Okay. Now that we have celebrated the YMCA, we realize Donald Trump is iconic and all of this stuff. Let's get down to the thing that everybody was shocked by last week, which was the appointment or the announcement of the appointment of Matt Gaetz. Everyone was confused by this one for Attorney General until it was re-brought up that in 2022, Matt Gaetz was the congressman that discovered the Hunter Biden laptop.
Sir, again, we can do this back and forth for the next couple of minutes. I don't have any information about the Hunter Biden laptop or the
But should you? I mean, you're the assistant director of FBI Cyber.
By the block and line chart, no, sir, I should not.
Who should we put in that chair to ask questions about this laptop that FBI has had for 3 years?
Sir, I'm not in a position to make a recommendation who should say.
So you don't have it. You don't know who has it. You don't know where it is. You're the assistant director. You know, earlier you talked about whether or not you were the Grant Hill or the Christian Leitner. It sounds like you're the Chris Webber trying to call a timeout when you don't have one. So I mean, who is it? Do you even know who has it? Do you know who we should put in that chair to ask these questions to?
No, sir, I don't know who has it.
Well, could you find out and tell us? You're going to have to give us briefings, thanks to Mr. Liu and Mr. Massey's question about whether or not the FBI was taking a $5 million test drive on the Pegasus system that was being used to target people in politics, people in government, people in the media, people in American life. So will you commit to give us a briefing as the assistant director of FBI Cyber as to where the laptop is, whether or not it's a point of vulnerability, whether or not the American people should wonder whether or not the first family is compromised?
Sir, I'd be happy to take your request back to our office.
Gosh, I mean, will you advocate for that briefing? You will?
I will be happy to take your request back to FBI headquarters.
Well, do you believe that is a briefing that the Congress is worthy of having, I guess?
Sir, I'm not going to answer that question. Right? I'm here to talk. The invitation says oversight of the FBI's cyber division. It does not say anything.
Well, right, but I mean, this is a cyber asset. This is a point of vulnerability. If there are passwords, if there are business deals, if there are references to things that could harm our country, like you can't even sit here right now and say that you know that there's not a point of vulnerability. Maybe there are other crimes, maybe there are tax issues or whatever, but as it relates to is the first family sufficient cyber infrastructure to protect? You don't even know if they're compromised. Tell you what, Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record of this committee the contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, which I'm in possession of.
I'm not.
There's no objection to that.
So I can't say no objection.
I've never had.
I will object pending further investigation.
And what's the basis of that objection?
It's a unanimous consent request, and I object pending.
Very well, I have a subsequent question. Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the receipt.
It may very well be
from the Mac shop.
It may very well be entered into the record after we look at it further.
Very well, Mr. Chairman, I have a subsequent unanimous consent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the receipt from the Department
Mr.
of Justice
Chairman, this is
to
Ms.
the
Deming.
Mac shop.
Am I next, or am I next?
Without
Number one promise by Donald Trump this election cycle was no tax on tips. So here is the Speaker of the House explaining how that is maybe going to happen.
So you are going to bring up extending the Trump tax cuts in the first 100 days, it sounds like. What about the president-elect's promise to eliminate taxes on tips for the service industry? How soon might we see a vote on that?
Look, I think that's an important promise. I think that it's one of the reasons that the mandate was so large. The president won, of course, the popular vote and electoral college and what looks to be a landslide now. And this is part of the one of the promises that he wants to deliver on. We're going to try to make that happen in the Congress. You got to do the math. You got to make sure that these new savings for American people can be paid for, and make sure the economy is a pro-growth economy. We know how to do it. We've delivered on that before, and we'll do it again. And I think that'll be part of the equation.
All right, we saw the ugly game move of the Republicans, which is essentially that they discovered a laptop through unconventional means and put it into the record, even though the Democrats didn't want to, even though the FBI was trying to bury that the laptop existed, that they had the possession of it. Basically, the Democrats and the FBI are one side, and the Republicans and Trump are the other in this scenario. Here's the Democrats' plan for how they're going to get back to reality.
What's your take? What's your response to that Democratic official deliberately announcing that they're going to defy court orders and count these provisional ballots?
Well, again, I'm not going to chase every kinds of quotes, things like that, because I think you just pointed out that it refers to about 115 ballots, and that's not going to have an impact on this race at this point. So where we are now? It's very, very close, and I guarantee you, if Dave McCormick were in the opposite situation where he was down 15 to 17,000 votes, he would absolutely want to have every last vote counted as well, too.
Now that we see the mischief afoot, the wag the dog tales that we will see, if you haven't seen the movie, you need to check it out. It is a vital necessity when listening to this podcast. Wag the Dog is probably the #1 political commentary that I will reference, because there's a reason it's not massively distributed on major platforms, even though it hosts major talent from the 90s, Woody Harrelson, Dustin Hoffman. It's incredible because it essentially shows you exactly how politics works. And they made the movie in the 90s at a time when people were really just not caring about what the Clinton administration did, because there was a internet boom afoot and the economy was going boom, boom, boom. Because, you know, there's all those housing loans that fell through. But anyway, on to the reality of how news is going to operate moving forward. The news is going to take a positive spin. Here is Morning Joe explaining why they decided to take a Trump interview for the first time in 7 years.
No surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realized it's time to do something different, and that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
You need the ratings. You needed to interview somebody of substance, and that person of substance was Donald Trump. What you didn't know is that we don't care what happened in the interview. We just care about the 2 minutes of you explaining how you're going to pander for the next year. Democrats leaning in even harder to the let's work together, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. This guy going to defend Matt Gaetz.
President Trump announced he was nominating now former Congressman Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. I want to play you what you had to say about him back in April.
I served 20 years in the military. It's my absolute honor to be in Congress, but I served with some real scumbags. Look, Matt Gaetz, he paid minors to have sex with him at drug parties.
Matt Gaetz has denied those charges, but your reaction to his nomination?
There's not one person that I know of that hasn't met Matt Gaetz and has an opinion. So I wish him well. I hope he goes on and does good things for our country.
You would like to see him get that nomination?
I would like to see him go do good things for our country.
But wait a minute. What you just said is he's a scumbag. You want him to be confirmed?
I want him to do good things for our country. I want everyone to do good things for our country. And the division, the more we can be united under this unified government, I think the better.
Also, John Fetterman, just message to America, don't freak out.
You have said that Democrats shouldn't be, quote, freaking out over every single thing Trump does. Are you freaking out at all about any of these cabinet picks, I wonder?
Well, I mean, there's some that I would absolutely be excited to vote for, like my colleague from Florida or the representative from New York, of course. And then there's others that are just absolute trolls, just like Gaetz and those things. And that's why, Democrats, like Trump, that gets the kind of thing, I mean, he gets the kind of thing that he wanted, like the freak out and all of those things. And he hasn't even been, it's still not even Thanksgiving yet. And if we're having meltdowns, every tweet or every appointment or all those things, I mean, it's going to be 4 years. And just the last time I was on your network, I was warning about the jackpot. And I use that metaphor of the slot machine, the 777. And if Trump wins, then it's likely that's going to happen. He's going to get the House. We're going to have the Senate and the presidency, and the real jackpot is the Supreme Court.
And lastly, on this positive spin of spins, Mr. Adam Schiff gets a little shifty.
Well, I think we have to address, frankly, a structural problem with the economy that we have not, significantly delivered on enough, and that is that it's just not working for millions of people. Yeah. And the problem is that, not that they're not working, unemployment is low. The problem today is that people are working and they still can't get by.
Some of them 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah,
exactly. And I think when people see the quality of life their parents had and say, that's better than what I have, and the future for my kids is even more in doubt, all too many will entertain any demagogue who comes along promising that they alone can fix it. So we're going to have to address these structural economic problems if we're going to not only become a majority again, but become a durable majority, which is what I want to see happen.
Oh, and then Mr. Adam gets even a little shiftier when he starts talking about defending the Russia hoax, even though Jake Tapper's like, bro, I talked to the people at the Boys Cast and like, it's fake. I read it. It's not real. I was the guy that reported on it. You duped me. Can you please just give me a sorry or something? And like, no, actually, I'm Adam Schiff and I am the shiftiest.
You were censured in the House last year for, in their view, holding positions of power during the Trump presidency as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And according to them, quote, abusing this trust by saying there was evidence of collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. And I wonder if you are feeling at all, introspective at all, about that was, according to the Mueller report and according to your Republican colleagues, an overstatement. And I wonder if you think in any way you help set the table for these disruptors.
First of all, it wasn't an overstatement. There is evidence of collusion. The Trump campaign manager was meeting with Russian intelligence and giving them internal polling data, just to give you one example. And the Mueller report sets all this out.
It does say, quote, the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities, which doesn't mean that he didn't, that there weren't meetings, but they didn't find evidence.
Mueller says that too. He says the fact that we didn't find proof beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean there wasn't evidence of conspiracy or coordination. So, but look, that's not what people were voting on.
But now that we're done with the whole Democrats going to take a positive spin, let's go back to what they really want to do, which is what they're probably going to just start doing in like a week or two. They're just going to lean in hard on this, and it's not going to work because, again, when you say Trump's a Nazi 2 days before the election and then you lose the election, you've pretty much you floated the boat on the whole like calling people names thing. But here is ABC giving an ultimate mainstream legacy media recap of the people that are owned by Stark Industries, aka what is it? Let's see if it can be woke. ChatGPT for the win, guys. Are you talking about Lockheed Martin? Yes, I am.
Among them, controversial picks like the world's richest man, Elon Musk, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who will lead a new Department of Government Efficiency, an amorphous role aimed at slashing federal spending. While that move raised a lot of intrigue, other picks have raised eyebrows, to say the least, and some outright opposition, including Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, despite her critics claiming she has sympathetic views towards Russia. Fox News personality Pete Hegseth to lead the Department of Defense, despite him having no experience running an organization near the scale of the U.S. military. Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, prompting him to step down from Congress, a move that ended an ethics probe into alleged illicit drug use and whether he paid for sex with a minor. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead Health and Human Services, a massive role overseeing 13 major health agencies such as the CDC, NIH, and FDA by someone who has publicized disproven conspiracy theories about vaccines and COVID-19 treatments. That pick drew rebukes from top health officials, including former Biden White House COVID-19 response coordinator, Dr. Ashish Jha, who said, "I worry a lot about going backwards just at a time when we have made so much progress in American medicine."
Now that we've recapped the entire like propaganda movement that isn't really a movement because everybody stopped listening to their bullshit before the election, clearly, since they lost the election. But RFK, let's complain about him and say, oh, I'm outraged. Like vaccines. We need more vaccines, even though I'm on YouTube, Rumble,
What kind of power and influence you think RFK Jr. would have?
You know, Martha, I am outraged because lives are at stake here. The head of Health and Human Services touches programs that affect every single life in our country. I've been focusing mainly on the public health impacts. You know, as you know, I'm a pediatrician. I practiced pediatrics for more than 30 years, and there's nothing that I've done for my patients that I know has more positive impact than getting them vaccinated fully and on time.
Yeah, remember that Matt Gaetz report that they need so badly because Stark Industries, Lockheed Martin shooting missiles. We can't do that anymore. Matt Gaetz is Al Capone.
You know, it's a little bit like our obsession right now with the ethics committee report on Matt Gaetz. You know, I mean, how is it that this is what we're focusing on? Matt Gaetz is by any standard completely unqualified to be the Attorney General, and yet we're sort of focused on this, you know, cherry on the cupcake of the ethics report. You know, it sort of reminds me of Al Capone. In 1931, Al Capone is convicted of a couple of counts of tax evasion. Now, he was a killer and a rum runner and a mafioso, and yet he was convicted of tax evasion. This is what the conversation we're having about Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
You know, well, what about this ethics report? You know, and so, no, these people are manifestly unqualified, and you know, they're not prepared to run the very complicated organizations they've been asked to run.
Mr. Shifty Pants, Matt Gaetz can't happen. Yeah, it can't happen. It can't happen because you guys are screwed if it happens. We already saw that earlier on the show.
Heard what Speaker Johnson said about Matt Gaetz. What do you think?
I think he's not only unqualified, he is really disqualified. Are we really going to have an attorney general who there's credible allegations he was involved in child sex trafficking, potential illicit drug use, obstruction of investigation, who has no experience serving in the Justice Department, only being investigated by it? But Jake, I think the whole point with these nominees, several of them, is their unqualification, is their affirmative disqualification. That's Trump's point, because what he wants to do with these nominees is establish that the Congress of the United States will not stand up to him with anything. If they will confirm Matt Gaetz, they will do anything he wants. I mean, look how the speaker had to tie himself in knots.
Oh, cool. Another worn out excuse in Lane Bryant. Here we go. Tulsi Gabbard, Russian asset.
Tulsi Gabbard is someone who has met with war criminals, violated the Department of State's guidance, and secretly, clandestinely went to Syria and met with Assad, who gassed and attacked his own people with chemical weapons. She's considered to be essentially, by most assessments, a Russian asset.
Gotcha. Finally, will the Fox News guy that is in charge of the military now, will he get rid of the woke military? Shocker, he will. Yay!
Hegseth has also said that any general that was involved in any of the DEI woke crap has got to go. Do you expect Donald Trump to fire top generals who he considers woke, or those close to former chairman Mark Milley?
I mean, I don't think you have to
Fire,
interpret.
arrest.
Yeah, I don't think you have to interpret anything. I think they've been very clear.
That's been